Okay, so here we go again. All eyes to be on Alconbury this Tuesday. Not very long after the excitement and dizzying highs of the phenomenally successful march on Sunday, we find this in the newspapers. Cambridge Independent. Mill Road Bridge closure welcomed and feared. So, I know that all of you know all of this already. We all know what we're looking at. I just wanted to get it down like usual. Get it down on the record for posterity and for wider public consumption. And just go through the process of what I've been through over the last couple of days. So you look at this. Mill Road Bridge closure welcomed and feared. Okay, so this was like a day, like 2 days after the march that we had. And then suddenly you realise, oh my God, this thing's going to happen actually really soon. This is quite urgent. Marcia Elderfield posted, I just received the agenda for the Highways and Transport Committee on the 7th of March. So you click on that and you get taken to the agenda pack, which is the outline for the meeting on Tuesday. You scroll down and the key decisions which are to be made. The first one is the Mill Road Bridge closure. You open that and then you come through to agenda item number 4 and this thing right here. The committee is being asked to A. Determine the formal objections without holding a public inquiry. Okay. B. Approve the proposed modal filter on Mill Road Bridge as advertised. And C. Inform the objectors accordingly. Now, there are so many ways to approach this topic, which is why it can be quite overwhelming. I've just decided to zero in on the one point which I have taken issue with consistently throughout this and all of my readings. Go down into the background in 1.4 and it refers to the public consultation of the GCP, which happened in spring. And this is the one I made a video about before, which I couldn't find the results for. Now they've actually included the results, the report for that survey here. They should have published it on the same page as the original survey. They didn't, but here it is anyway. Thankfully handed to you less than a day to go before the deadline, before you can submit anything. Anyway, so having a look down here, this is where I get to the crux of my issue and the question which I've managed to submit to them, the council. So hopefully my thing will actually be read out, or I'm going to read it out on Tuesday, among many other questions. So this is a massive document, 153 pages. Obviously, we can't go through all of that. But basically, the outline of it is simply this. The consultation adopted a multi-channel approach to promote and seek feedback, including through traditional and online paid-for, owned and earned media, community engagement events in key or high-footfall locations along the route, and through the widespread distribution of around 3,500 consultation leaflets. Okay, that is like media speak. Media manager lingo, complete fluff. Basically, they distributed a bunch of leaflets and advertised it on posters and placards and on the radio and through social media, etc. They received back 1,986 complete responses. 1,986 plus 70 additional written responses. So we're looking at just over 2,000. 2,056. 2,056 entire responses, okay, out of everyone who's going to be affected by this, and most people didn't even know about the consultation while it was still happening. And throughout all of this, the key findings in the summary, they refer to 1,971 respondents, 1,952 respondents, and they say things like 86% of respondents said this, 68% of respondents said that. Anyway, the point is that they keep saying 78% of respondents, 72% of respondents. So that's what the GCP report says. Now, any statistician or analyst at all will know, looking at it in an unbiased way, that that is talking about the number of respondents. Let's just say 70% of 1,980 is 1,386. So you're looking at around 1,386 people saying this stuff. And that doesn't take into account the fact that this was a campaign by Mill Road for People, a campaign organisation who had organised effectively, had to lean weight on this consultation while they had the window of opportunity. They were coaching their members, as were CamCycle, how to put through positive feedback. Other residents were not being given the same help or coaching, and most people in Cambridge didn't even know it was up on the table at the time, until recently when it was too late. Now let's just go over just to a few comments here which are insightful. So my thing's flashing up and it's confusing me. The hardest thing about all of this is actually making these videos is trying to backtrack through Facebook. It's confusing as hell. So underneath Marcia's post, we got this comment from Frank Gawthrop. Frank Gawthrop seems like an interesting and knowledgeable fellow. He's often putting in some wise words and correcting people when they're wrong. He's saying, well, the bridge only opened after the COVID closure because the chairman was off sick and Jerry Bird was chairing and used his casting vote to reopen, for which she received a lot of abuse. Ever since, the Romsey Group, Mill Road for People, have run a highly effective campaign to close it again. There was never a residents group that emerged to keep it open, except the traders, and I am sorry to say the majority of councillors ignore largely because they don't believe them. The result of the consultation showed a heavy percentage of residents in favour of the bridge closing, although those in a wider area who will suffer an increase from diverted traffic were not asked. Outside of this group, there is a substantial body of support for restrictions on vehicles, and this is indeed part of a government policy through its active travel programme. People moan a lot about this closure, but I regret to say that posting messages is not the same as what Mill Road for People did, which was to print thousands of leaflets and go around at weekends knocking on doors and persuading people that this was a good idea. Yes, it will go through, and I feel really sorry about this, but it is a classic case of a well-organised campaign. I might add these are the same people behind Parents for the Sustainable Travel Zone. Now, this is something that I already understand. Most of you already also understand, but there it is, iterated again by Frank. Mill Road for People is an effective campaigning organisation. Okay, so they got the head start on this back after the Mill Road Bridge reopened after COVID. Another point to point out is that this Jerry Bird, having voted to reopen the bridge, received a lot of abuse. Now that's a very worrying thing, a big cause for concern, because any historian or political analyst will be able to tell you that there are loads of examples throughout history when lobbyists or active organisations or even organised crime or big corporations have been able to put a heavy lean on the public representatives by either bribing them or intimidating them or threatening them. Luckily, we don't live in such violent times as they did, for example, back in like the 1950s in America, where literally people had their houses blown up if they were going to vote against what the mafia were trying to get through or organised criminals wanted. But it shows you, people are receiving actual abuse for going against this Mill Road for People's wishes or for what CamCycle want. When they try to go against the GCP's proposals, they're actually receiving abuse. And this is something which I've heard from other councillors saying as well, that they receive actual threats, bodily, violent threats, because they are trying to oppose this sustainable travel zone nonsense. And I just popped a question back to Frank saying, hi, I was wondering if you knew more about this. Is that on record? And he said, yes, I know Jerry personally. It was both online and via letter. The matter was reported. So, that's substantiated. We could look into that later on. The main point I'm saying is that this whole council procedure is being heavily leaned on by the interest group who's trying to make it happen. And that isn't technically fair, and it's not really democratic. So then, where else was I looking? Yeah, now here's another point. I just quickly asked, is it too late to put a public question to the council? If so, if not, how do I do it? Yeah, I got linked by Melanie Telford how to do it, so I did that, click on that. I found out I was literally hours away from the deadline, so I quickly scrambled to submit my question. Where is it? Here it is. Getting involved. You click here, how to put your thing in. Now the point is that when councils deliberate, they have to deliberate also based on the responses that they've received and the objections that they've received. They have petitions and public questions, but there's so many things that they get. They have to basically trim them down and cherry pick them. For example, Lucille Murby is another one who's been getting frustrated with the council. She raised the question, or she had a list of objections to the scheme, and the main one here being that she pointed out the existence of Carter Bridge, a purpose-built cycle and pedestrian bridge just down the road. This completely negates the need to close Mill Road Bridge, and that isn't addressed in the council's, literature or accompanying documents. It seems like they're just going to disregard the existence of that, and the fact that she's raised it here with them appears not to be making it into the council deliberation proceedings, because she got a response back saying, regarding the point you have made about the alternative bridge may not have been included in the list of objections because it was either not received or whittled down. There were several hundred responses as part of the overall objection summary. As you can appreciate, to try and condense responses into a manageable document is incredibly challenging. Now, I appreciate that, but the fact is that this is an important public highway, and you're proposing to close it. And if you're saying that you can't consider important responses like this because it's difficult or challenging to get them into a manageable document size for the consideration of the councillors, then aren't you justified in extending the debate time, or maybe giving it a little bit more time to scrutinise and actually get this thing done properly, rather than just kind of rushing it through because it's inconvenient or challenging? But that is an incredibly pertinent point, I find. You've got a cycle bridge 200 yards down the road that way, which was built specifically for cyclists. Are you going to comment on that? Apparently not, because maybe it's too hard to get it into the documents. Anyway, the point I'm making here is that the whole council process in this is being pushed and rushed and is not being done fairly or properly. It's got the weight of advantage on the side of Mill Road for People and CamCycle Group, who have, who, for all we know, they could be the entirety of the 1,300 responses to the consultation. Now, anyway, here's the important part, and this is what makes up the thrust of the question which I managed to submit. They keep referring to the consultation results as a majority verdict, like a consensus of public opinion in support of closing the bridge, which isn't true. As I've pointed out, you've got 70% of respondents saying something, not 70% of everybody saying something. And if you look at the Independent article, the Cambridge Independent article which came out the other day, Mill Road Bridge closure welcomed by some but fear impact on local businesses. Now they say it time and again. Cambridge County Council Highways and Transport Committee will meet on the 7th to discuss a recommendation by council officers to close the bridge once more, following the results of a consultation that showed a majority of respondents were in favour of the charge. Campaign group Mill Road for People said its years of work have been vindicated by the prospect of the bridge closure, and that it wanted to see the through traffic that's been blighting the lives of local residents move elsewhere. When it says move elsewhere, it's really just talking about Tennyson Road, just around the corner. It doesn't care about the residents of Tennyson Road or other roads. Anyway, it's vague. The consultation results showed respondents wished to see the environment enhanced. But, on the other side of it, there's a petition which has got nearly 5,000 signatures, 4,800 signatures. Is the council going to acknowledge that? So this is their response to the objections. These are the objections, there's the response. The main point I'm trying to get to here is this. In support, GCP consultation showed both local and wider communities supported the scheme. Noted. No, it didn't. No, it bloody well didn't. It says that in the report. It never says in the report there is a wider community support. That is how the council have interpreted it. They've interpreted it conveniently to back their own agenda. It's like marking your own homework. If you haven't got anybody looking at you over your shoulder and marking it independently, you're just going to be like, yep, that works for me. Yep, that works for me. The consultation does not show local or wider community support. Since the consultation closed in spring, there has been widespread expression of opposition, including the marches, one this Sunday and one last November, petitions, newspaper articles, people scrambling to try to organise to push back against this Mill Road for People campaign. Anyway, you get the point. So that was what I've been wrestling with over the last couple of days, and it was really just thanks to this fact that I learned that there was still time for me to get a question in. I was able to quickly jump to action, pull my head together, and knock together this question, which I'm putting to them on Tuesday. Hopefully, I don't know if it actually will go ahead, or maybe it'll get called off or something like that. So I will have 3 minutes to present this. The accompanying document, Mill Road Spring 2022 Consultation Report, seems to refer to a majority percentage of respondents, 1,986 responses out of approximately 3,500 leaflets distributed, as a majority opinion, inferring consent or support from the public. 70% of 1,986 is 1,390 responses, not very many in the whole picture. Also, the cycling campaign group CamCycle organise and coach their members in how to fill in these consultations, which is a help that the rest of the public do not receive. 3,500 leaflets distributed in total is a very small number compared to how many people around Cambridge will be afflicted and who use Mill Road. The vast majority were none the wiser when it came to this consultation in spring 2022. Therefore, one should not take the results of the consultation as any sort of valid survey and should not infer a popular mandate from those findings. Will the committee recognise and acknowledge that this is the case and adjust their decision-making accordingly to account for the widespread opposition which has been expressed prior to the consultation deadline itself, and recognise that the figures in the consultation report are distorted and skewed by other factors which are not included in the report? Yeah, a bit wordy, but there you go. Like I said, I threw it together in haste, did the best that I could, and then I got a response saying, "Thank you for submitting your apply to address the meeting online. Your reference number is blah 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 blah." So now we'll see. And I have received. Oh, and here we go. So this is why I wanted to make this video specifically now, because this is the pre video of what's going to happen on Tuesday, just to keep everybody up to speed with where I'm at. Because this Mill Road thing seems like the most urgent thing right now. I got a response from the Highways Committee Deputy Democratic Services Manager. He's the kind of organiser dude to help the public in. Dear registered speaker, thank you for registering to speak, blah blah blah. The meeting begins at 10 a.m. and the item for which you have all registered to speak to is the first substantive item and will likely begin at around 10:05. The screenshot below shows the nearest public car park, etc, etc, etc. You will have 3 minutes in which to address the committee. Given the number of speakers registered, and to be fair to all parties, the chair will enforce the 3 minutes rigorously. Okay, that's fine. There will be several members of my team on hand, and they will be able to help and guide you to the right place. So everybody needs to make sure that they get there on time, obviously. I'm a little bit worried about getting lost, so I'm going to give myself plenty of time. Then I just sent a reply to that, because this is the next thing on my mind, and I know that some other people have expressed a similar query. What's going to happen next? I said, "Hi Daniel, thanks for the info. I intend to be there on the day. For my knowledge about the overall process, could you or a colleague answer these questions? After the vote is cast and the decision made, if the decision is to go ahead with the proposed closure, what is the next step in the process before that is enacted on the ground? Is there a subsequent opportunity to appeal or scrutinise the decision? How long will there be before the bridge is closed? And if that does happen, will there be an opportunity to have the results assessed and reviewed and potentially reversed or repealed at a later date? Thanks, Will." And I just received a reply, and I haven't read it yet, so we will read it together. Okay, here we go. "Hi Will, thank you for letting me know. To answer your questions, following the decision, whichever way it goes, I have to produce a decision statement. From the date that is published, there is 3 working days in which to request for a review for that decision. What? From the date that is published, there is 3 working days in which a request for a review of that decision can take place. That review has to be requested by 9 members of the Strategy and Resources Committee and then agreed by the monitoring officer. I don't know how long it would be before the bridge is closed after that date. I'd have to ask colleagues in highways and come back to you. I assume it will be subject to the availability of materials and equipment and how quickly engineers can get on site. Well, I've understood, I've already heard, and you can see that there are actually cameras already ready. You know, they seem to have been working ahead of the process and anticipating a vote in favour of their plans, and they're already getting the ANPR cameras in place, ready for this to go ahead immediately after the vote. So I don't think it'll be very long. As I understand it, and I will clarify this with highways to be certain, this is a permanent traffic regulation order. Therefore, there would be no further assessment or review beyond what has already been undertaken in reaching this point of the process. Provided that the decision is taken to close the bridge and is not called in for review by the Strategy and Resources Committee, there is no further right of review or appeal within the Council's process. It would be a matter for judicial review. Wow. So there you go. I hope that helps. I suppose it clarifies it, but it doesn't help. It doesn't give me much hope. I'll come back to you with greater certainty on the points I need to check with highways. Okay. So there you have it. That's where we are now, and that's what we look forward to seeing on Tuesday. You know, the odds are out. It looks like it's likely to fall in favour of the closure of the bridge. Maybe if there was enough political will or organisation from within the council, they might be able to have the thing called into question within the next 3 days with 9 members of the Strategy and Resources Committee. I don't know anything about that. But, man, a traffic regulation order, that becomes a permanent thing. Anyway, there you have it. Sorry if this video was a little bit rambling and scrambled, but, I mean, that's the nature of the game, isn't it? Trying to pull all of these documents together quickly and make sense of them all. So, as we know, the thing we're looking forward to is Tuesday at Alconbury, 10 in the morning. We're going to watch the Highways Committee cast their final decision vote on whether or not to close the Mill Road Bridge. Thank you.